Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? The news that we have all been waiting for and anticipating would happen right here, 3 o'clock Central Time on this Tuesday, the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way. Derek Carr, per Schefter and others, the Raiders have officially informed Derek Carr that he's been released. So the team released him before his $40.4 million contract became guaranteed today. So Carr, of course, is now a free agent, and he can sign with whomever he wants. He is expected to draw interest from quarterback-needy teams, including the Saints, quite possibly the Panthers, as Schefter notes, and others. So that is official, that Derek Carr, as we all expected would happen, released by the Raiders. They were done. They moved on. They tried to trade him to see if they could get anything for him before they released him. The Saints were the only team willing to make a deal. Carr would not waive his no-trade clause, so the Raiders will just cut Derek Carr instead of paying him an exorbitant amount of money, and he'll be a free agent ready to sign wherever he may be. Now, the interesting part of this and where it goes next is, what will the list of suitors look like for Derek Carr? There is some school of thought that because Derek Carr has known this for some time, that his representatives may already have the structure of a deal in place somewhere, likely New Orleans. That's what everybody seems to believe, that New Orleans would be the front runner. It's the only place where he took a visit. You know the history. Derek Carr was drafted by Dennis Allen with the Raiders. Clearly, there's still some synergies there, and Allen would like to bring Derek Carr to New Orleans. Again, to stress the point that I've made, I am perfectly okay with the New Orleans Saints signing Derek Carr as a free agent at a approachable price tag. I'll go over what that might look like here in a minute. But I was never going to be okay with trading for Derek Carr, because you're giving up an asset to take on a terrible contract. So that contract now wiped away. If you have the opportunity to sign Derek Carr, great. Derek Carr is a better option than Jameis Winston. He's a better option at this point, clearly, than Andy Dalton. He's probably the best realistic option out there. The Saints aren't going to sign Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to get Lamar Jackson. So if Derek Carr is the best realistic option you have and you get him at an affordable price, go do it. Here was Ian Rapaport on the NFL Network today, though, talking about Derek Carr and the fact that this probably isn't done because he may go play the free agent field.
Derek Carr expected to be one of the most coveted free agents out there, and in a really interesting way, because no other free agents, if you are not released, you can't talk to anyone right now. You got to wait till the start of the league year, or at least until right before the start of the league year, when everyone does the thing where they talk to each other but don't actually do deals, because that would be illegal. Derek Carr gets to do all of that as soon as he is officially released today. So he gets to get a jump on it. I would not expect a quick free agency here. I would expect multiple visits. And I would also keep in mind that the Saints really liked him, and there's some mutual interest there as well.
Okay, so Saints liked him, mutual interest there. The question becomes, obviously, will Derek Carr sign with New Orleans? Are there other possibilities for the Saints? A big part of that is looking at the list of quarterback-needy teams and seeing who checks what box. We've talked about Houston. They're going to draft a quarterback. The Colts, they're going to draft a quarterback. Carolina, where they're positioned, very likely going to draft a quarterback as well. What about teams like the Jets? Well, they've been linked to Aaron Rodgers. Can they get that deal done? If not, is Carr a possibility there? The Tennessee Titans, what are they looking at? There's some, you look at the list of quarterback-needy teams where Carr might make sense, and maybe that list isn't as long as you thought, which means if the Saints don't have a lot of competition, you don't get into a bidding war. Perhaps you have an opportunity to snag Derek Carr at a very affordable price. Now, the other thing that's interesting today that popped up is this from Albert Breer. And Albert Breer today over at SI noted that there is another quarterback that the Saints could be interested in if the Derek Carr situation doesn't work out. He writes, Another quarterback to watch in free agency for New Orleans would be Baker Mayfield. The Saints staff was high on Mayfield ahead of the 2018 draft, and those old draft evals can definitely have an impact down the road with guys as they get older and hit free agency, especially when there's a need that can be tied to it. Okay. My guess is that everyone listening right now will have an immediate reaction to that. Baker Mayfield is very polarizing. There's just no way around it. He was a very sort of cocky, braggadocious player in college, but he was very successful. Won the Heisman at Oklahoma, was the number 1 overall pick. When things steadied in Cleveland, they won a playoff game, looked good. He played through some injuries and probably hurt himself as a result because he played poorly through those injuries, and it probably cost him his opportunity in Cleveland. Went to Carolina this year. Darnold, he wins the job, ultimately loses the job, finishes the year in LA with the Rams, and now he's a free agent again. Baker Mayfield, whatever his market value would be, might be a much better option than Derek Carr. Again, I want to be clear. If I line up Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr side by side, Mayfield at 27 years old, threw for 2,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks, had a QBR of 24.5. That was 31st in the NFL among starting quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield was not a full-time starter this year, obviously, but was just not very good. Ultimately, why he went to L.A., why he was cut by Carolina and ended up in L.A. He has now been dumped by the team that drafted him first overall, the team that signed him last offseason, and now as a free agent, he can sign wherever he wants to, see what happens with the Rams. Remember how I told you the website Spotrac, which monitors contracts and things like that for professional athletes, they have Derek Carr's market value at $37 million per year. $37 million for Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a better player today than Baker Mayfield. That's not debatable. But Baker Mayfield, his market value, according to Spotrac anyway, is an average annual salary of $6.5 million. The most basic question, the fundamental question that's got to be asked first is, do you think the New Orleans Saints can win a championship with Derek Carr as they're constructed? You know my answer to that. The answer is no. I think Derek Carr is a nice player. I think he's probably somewhere in the top dozen quarterbacks in the NFL. I think, however, his best days are behind him. I think the old, and maybe this is just me being programmed from watching Sean Payton for so many years, where Sean's old adage, and this was a Bill Parcells line, Sean's old adage was, it's better to get rid of a player a year too soon than a year too late. It's better to let a player walk a year early than to be stuck with a bad contract and be saddled with an aging player. We saw this, and most of the times it works. It doesn't always. Darren Sproles was a good example of that. Darren Sproles could still play, but the Saints bet that Sproles was nearing the end of his career, so they traded him at the time to Philly. Probably should have held on to Darren Sproles for a couple of more years. More often than not, though, that's worked. That strategy, that approach has worked. And maybe that's just how I'm conditioned, having watched Sean Payton do this for so many years. If you pay Derek Carr right now, you're paying a quarterback that is on the back end of his career and is not worth $37 million and does not make you a contender. If you can sign Derek Carr to something more like a deal that you signed Jameis Winston to, 2 years, $25 million, 12.5 per, cool. I'm down with that. When you start getting north of $20 million per, $30 million per, it's hard to stomach that price tag for Derek Carr because he doesn't make you a contender. So why eat up that much of your cap? If it comes down to it and you tell me I could have Derek Carr for $37 million or Baker Mayfield for $6 million, I'm taking Baker Mayfield drafting a quarterback, using Baker as my bridge, or the equivalent, whoever that is. Maybe it's Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe it's go look at the list of free agents that are out there. See who's available. Mason Rudolph. Give me a guy that's a bridge player to my draft pick who I think is my eventual starter. I think that's got to be the Saints' approach. Because if you keep crippling yourself financially, you're only going to perpetuate this problem. There's no easy solution at quarterback. And I don't believe 32-year-old Derek Carr is it. The Saints may feel differently, but he'll have a lot of people to prove wrong when the team that's invested 9 figures in him and 9 years just kicked him to the curb and said, we can't win with this guy. Even when you had Devontae Adams, you had Josh Jacobs, you brought in an OC that from New England, it worked with Tom Brady, that had a great reputation, and he couldn't maximize him. What you gonna look like in New Orleans? I'd love Derek Carr, but at the right price. If not, I'll go bargain shopping. I'll go thrift shopping. I'll pop some tags with Macklemore. Let's do it. I'm down with that for a year. And then give me my young guy. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.